I should work out more. I should make more money. I should have a six pack. I should eat more salads. I should do the things that Mike told me to do on this podcast. Like, those are all external aspects that we put on ourselves, expectations. And so we can feel weighted down by those, and it can quiet our ability to hear what our own truth is. And now we're living in an external world versus an internal world. My goal for anyone listening is to never, ever utter the word should again.
This is the Home of Healthspan podcast, where we profile health and wellness role models, sharing their stories and the tools, practices, and routines they use to live a lively life.
Mike, it is so great to see you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Andrew. Yeah, thanks so much for having me on.
Taylor and I are very excited to speak with you. You, I have to say, of all the guests that we've had so far, your content, the one I share the most with people. Everybody in the gym, I'm like, oh, you got to see this guy I'm talking to. You got to see some of the stuff he does. And I know we were just saying before, you've changed some of the reels you penned on Instagram, but can you talk about some of the feats of strength, the single arm overhead squats and other things? How did you get into that as, hey, I want to be the best of the world at these pretty incredible things?
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for following along on those lifts. I'm really curious in the gym. And so I like kind of exploring new ways of training. And I'm really good at keeping my arms straight, probably from a lot of yoga that I used to do and teach in my past, and a lot of strength and conditioning, Olympic weightlifting. So now I like to just experiment and learn different types of lifts and then see kind of how I can push them. And it feels like a big puzzle for me. So like the one arm overhead squat, there's like, where are you getting your hand on the bar? I mean, these are like pointless type of exercises, but they're really fun in terms of how they engage my body, my mind, my focus, keep me inspired to like be inside the gym. So it's, where am I placing my hand on the bar? Can I break through like perceived limitations? I mean, the first time I did it, I think I held like 135 over my head, and I was like, holy cow, like, 45s on each side, hold over my hand. The squat was pretty easy for me. And then I'm like, all right, let's see, maybe 185 or 200 pounds, my body weight, 205. And then every time I would come back to these lifts, it would just improve a little bit. I'd kind of learn something more. My body would kind of figure it out. And then I wound up with my personal best is 315, one arm overhead squatting. And so that's been a fun adventure to kind of move through. I haven't done it since, but yeah, I felt like the squat was really the limiting factor for me there.
You bring up what I think is an important point for listeners in that you do it not for the specific test, but because of the puzzle. It's what makes it more enjoyable for you. So a lot of people say, oh yeah, I don't like working out. And for them, it was, all they ever tried was running. Yeah. And what they really are saying is, I don't like running. Or there are infinite different opportunities to move your body, and finding something that stimulates that curiosity, that excitement, that enjoyment for you is what keeps you going back. Can you share, like, what is it you're working on these days? Is there one that you're kind of playing with?
I mean, you nailed it. It's really like, I'm sure maybe previous guests have talked about flow state before, and kind of seeing, where's the challenge meet the skill. So like the skills that you have, can you match an appropriate challenge for those skills, and then be completely dialed in and focus on that zone where you're, just locked into whatever it is that you're doing. And for me now, it's actually running. Funny that you mentioned that. Like I like to do these lifts. There's one called the two hands anyhow, which is like an old lift from the bronze era of strength and conditioning, like in the early 1900s, where it was kind of like, you see those like circus kind of pictures of guys like doing like these weird lifts and holding kettlebells. And they would travel around from town to town in Europe, and I think a little bit in the United States, but it was more popular in Europe. And they would just go out into the open square and challenge people to say, hey, let's see the heaviest 2 implements you can lift over your head. And there's different ways of lifting those up. And, today maybe in the gym, guys are like, what's your bench, or what do you squat? And they're always like kind of comparing. And so for that specific lift, it's what I do is I clean and jerk, and then I move one hand over to the middle, get that balanced, and then squat down, pick up a kettlebell and lift that overhead. And so I haven't done that one in a while. To answer your question, what I'm working on now is running, and actually like in ultra distance running and biking, mountain biking. So I'm doing a challenge called the Lead Challenge, which is in Leadville, Colorado. There's famous trail run and mountain bike, the Leadville 100s. But Leadville as a town, kind of like there was a mine there that closed down in the early 1800s. And the town went broke. Everyone, was working at the mine and didn't have a job. And so this guy, Ken Kubler at the time, well, not at the time, he's still there. He kind of came up with this idea to bring revenue and money into the town. He was like, let's do a 100-mile mountain race, across these humongous peaks in Colorado. And it caught on. And, that was 41 years ago. This would be the 41st year. It'll be the 30th year of the mountain bike. And Lifetime Fitness, like the big gym conglomerate, actually bought the trail, they bought the races, and they put on like a marathon, 50-mile trail run and bike, a 10K, and then the 200s. And if you do all 5 of those, and this year it's like in 7 weeks, it's called the Lead Challenge. And so that's what I'm training for this summer, to do the trail marathon at the end of June. Then the next weekend is actually the 50-mile trail run on Saturday, 50-mile bike on Sunday. And then like a month later is the 100-mile mountain bike ride, 10K the next morning. And then 5 days later is the 100-mile trail run.
Oh, you got to close it with a 100-mile trail run. That's one of the toughest ones. My roommate from law school did the run and talked about hallucinating multiple times during it. He thought he was riding a camel at times. He just wanted to lay down and cover himself with leaves. I mean, it's crazy just to do that one and to combine all that in a very short period. It's amazing how varied that is. You talked about teaching yoga into these old school like feats of strength into very high endurance. Like the marathon is one of the shorter pieces of the things that you're about to go tackle. What was it that inspired you to move from traditional strength into let's try the endurance thing as my next personal challenge?
Yeah, I never had really focused on my like aerobic system before. And I have a lot of friends. I live in Boulder, Colorado. And so there's a lot of people like in my circles that have done a lot of more aerobic stuff or triathlons or Ironmans or those types of things. And we're always talking about like zone 2 aerobic training. And I had never focused on that. When I was 18, I was a quarterback and corner in high school playing football. And I went to college and put me at middle linebacker. And so I was like, 190 and I'm 6'1". And I was like, I'm looking at the roster of all these guys. I'm like, I'm going to get hammered. And so my senior year, I learned actually how to Olympic weightlift from this Russian coach where I grew up. And I gained like 40 pounds in like 4 months, just like lifting and eating like crazy. But then that, kind of put me on that trajectory of lifting. And so I had focused my early years on lifting, whereas some of my buddies had focused their early years on this aerobic training. And so in my mind, I was like, okay, that makes sense. Let me start running, start practicing this lower heart rate stuff. I'm an infant in that because I've never done it before. And so it kind of took away some pressure of trying to be successful or comparing myself to either some strength lifts or to other people. I could just like be in my own experience.
How has like your training shifted, like knowing I kind of had a similar experience being like a jumper and sprinter in college, and like the transition from like fast twitch muscle development to slow twitch muscle development for endurance running is very different. Like, have you noticed any physique changes and like in terms of training, like have you had to lower your lifting load?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my first aerobic runs were like 15-minute miles. Like I was flat. Like it was the hardest on the ego, honestly, because I felt like I was athletic. I would just like set some records in like Turkish get-ups and different types of movements. But then I'm running 15-minute miles and my heart rate flies up. And so that was the most difficult part. But also I could see improvement because the next run was 14:30 and then 14 and then jumped to 12. And that kept me motivated because I could see those incremental gains, and I can still see them now. And so it's really fun to be able to, stay motivated in that way where you put in the work, maybe you drop some weight, maybe you lose some of your overall strength, but you gain some of this other ability. And at the moment, that's really what I'm into.
And how do you track, what do you use to track your heart rate? Do you have a watch that you use? Do you wear a heart rate monitor, anything? I know I'll run and only look at the zones that I'm running in. So I'm not focused on the pace when I'm zone training.
Yeah. So I have a Garmin. I'm actually sponsored by Garmin. Highly recommend Garmin. I love them. This is an Epix Pro 2, their new generation. And then I also wear a heart rate strap. Just because the technology on any wrist-based heart rate is not there to be as accurate as possible. So I always stay strapped with my heart rate monitor. And then, depending on what the goal of the session is, I can just kind of put on the watch face, what is it that I want to see? So I usually like overall time, my heart rate, pace, average pace, and then I just stay as disciplined as I can on the heart rate. Which I kind of read somewhere that if you jump out of your zone too, you jump up into tempo or a higher zone for too long, it's kind of like your body opens up the lactate, flushes into your system, and then it's hard to clear it. And not necessarily you lose the benefits, but you don't get as many. And I wanted to get as many as I could as fast as possible. So I was once it hits, even a few beats before my top, I'm walking or I'm slowing down.
That switching the discipline, right? To be able to break through new personal bests, right? At a certain point, if you just stick with the same thing, you're just trying to hold on to what you already had or try to get worse more slowly, right? As a former swimmer, or Taylor was a former runner, it'd be very hard to compete with the times we went in college. And so if that's what we had, then it would just be tapering down. Whereas switching from football to weights to running, you can go into something. You were just talking about your trajectory of 15-minute miles to 14 and a half to 14 to 12, that you can see the progress that keeps the motivation. Coming from, you think of a traditional long distance runner, very slight frame, very small, and thus the impact on ankles, knees, the stuff that they're having to carry through that is very different. You're coming from very heavy weightlifting, different physique. Have you been playing at all with the shoes you wear, the equipment? Because I imagine that's going to be a pretty important part of making it sustainable to do some of this stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'll talk about the shoes in a second, but just understanding if I have a strength background, so my body's strong, but it hasn't taken all that impact. And so learning the skill of running is similar as the skill of a Turkish get-up or the skill of partner acrobatics. Used to do a lot of that, the skill of a handstand. And so there's skill with running. It's not just putting one foot in front of the other, as I'm sure you guys both know. And, same thing with biking, how to pedal the bike. I always used to just be I'll just go ride my bike. But there's, especially mountain biking, there's cornering, there's downhills, there's climbing, there's body position, there's foot strikes, there's all of this different stuff. And so the more nuance I can get with it, the more engaged I can stay mentally. But in terms of what I was getting to with the running is that if I'm running downhill, where my foot's striking the ground is going to be important over time. If I'm doing, 50 to 80 mile weeks, up in the mountains, it's a lot of impact because I'm 215, I'm putting that pounding down on my body. So my favorite shoes, are Speedland. They're a newer shoe. They're made specifically for mountain running. They're fantastic. They're the only shoe that I would really like to run in. They're coming out with some new models, and they're doing really well. They're a higher end shoe for sure. They're pretty pricey, but the founders of them, I think, came from Puma and Under Armour and said, we just want to make the highest end trail running shoe, and it's just going to cost what it costs. But this is, if you want the best, you want the shoe that's going to last you the longest, this is the shoe for you. It's got a BOA system on it, which is those cranks that you spin and they click. A lot of biking shoes will have that as well. Yeah. And so it's helped dial in the fit. You can back it out. I just got back from a trail run, and on the way up, I was my foot was swelling a little bit. So I dialed it back real fast. And then on the way down, I tightened it up. And so that's a nice feature. But my favorite feature from them is the durability. Like I'm putting so much pounding on that shoe that when I used to use like a Hoka as example, I would run through that shoe in like 250 to 300 miles. Whereas the Speedlands, I can almost double that. And so if you put that with the cost, it's like, oh, it's actually, a better value.
Yeah, that total cost of ownership is the right way to think about it, right? It's not apples to apples otherwise.
Yeah.
In terms of like recovery and stuff, have you had to change any protocols, like going from lifting and now into this like running and cycling routine? Have you had to change like your diet? Have you had to change your supplements? Have you purchased any new like gadgets or gear to help you? And especially knowing you're going to be doing so much in a short period of time.
Yeah, no, totally. It's, I try to get really good at the basics, and it's hard to do that, like sleep, hydration, making sure I'm eating well. Those are the things that are like highest on the list for me. And then, I have a sauna, like a Sisu sauna, which I love. And so that's like a luxury that I can get in that almost every day. I have an Edge Theory cold tub that I get into. So I like to do contrast therapy going back and forth with the sauna and the cold tub. But making sure I'm in bed for like, depending on how hard the session is, like anywhere from 10 to 9 hours. Like I use my watch again. It gives me a sleep score. So it tells me like how much REM sleep I'm getting, how much total sleep, how much light sleep, all this stuff, and gives you a 1 to 100. Last night I got a 94. So I saw that. I was like, yes, that's awesome. But, making sure that even like before I'm sleeping, I'm winding down, getting off screens as much as possible. I don't have a problem getting really to sleep, but, I don't drink any alcohol. That's another thing that will really affect sleep. I actually have a long history with sleep and a sleeping disorder. And so I'm just wanting to make sure that that's set. Because if I get 6 hours, like I'm probably not even going to train because I'm stressing my body with not getting enough rest. I don't want to add in another stress of training. I'll just tweak the weekly schedule.
You talked about the prep kind of winding down. What does that routine look like? Like at what time do you start that? And are there certain steps that you go through? Do you do the contrast within a certain time of bed? And kind of what does that nighttime routine look like?
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, I live with an 8-year-old and an 8-year-old boy. So like, it's nice because he kind of gets to bed earlier. And so he has a wind down time where we're reading, it's quiet, he's in his room, it's like 8:00. And so I can just kind of carry that energy over to me. And then I can get into bed at, when there's a 9 on the clock. But, sauna and cold plunge before sleep is fantastic. I've been experimenting with tart cherry juice recently, which so far have, some positive benefits from. But yeah, keeping the room cold, keeping it dark, those are all really helpful things.
Do you wear an eye mask or you just have like blackout curtains or whatever it is to keep the room itself dark?
I need to get another set of eye mask. I have curtains that are dark, but there's seemingly, no matter how much I try to do it, there's always a little sliver that just comes in and hits my skin. And I did a holistic lifestyle training with Paul Chek like 10 plus years ago. And he says like, if the eyes are good, you don't want any light coming in the eyes, but your skin receives so much of that light that even if there's light hitting your foot, if your foot's out of the bed or your arm, it still triggers that physiological response that, oh, there's light, this is daytime, and it kind of can affect the sleep. So I try to think of it like cave mode. Like I just want it to be dark and cold and to just sleep. And then I can get out and then I can go get up and do my day.
So getting 10 hours, so 9, you mentioned you live with an 8-year-old. Does the 8-year-old let you not get up before 7 so you can get that 10 hours? Or what does that?
Yeah. I mean, he'll sleep for sure. Like he's out of school now. So that's great. So we're getting more sleep. But actually I have a puppy too. So I have a young puppy and it's making sure she's getting a lot of exercise and kind of like staying awake before we get to bed.
Okay.
Like if I get to bed and she's kind of just been like, resting or sleeping for those 2 hours, I was putting down Remy, then she's going to wake up at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning. And then that's going to affect, she's up. She's going to let all of us get up too.
You mentioned hydration. Is that, and I'm thinking the amount you're exerting, is that just water, or do you think about the electrolyte load that you're taking in to make sure you're truly hydrated? Or are there other kind of supplements you think about that you've seen help or hinder your sleep other than the tart cherry juice?
Yeah, I definitely take electrolytes, usually before I'm either doing a sauna or some type of exercise. And then like generally throughout the day, I like Element. I have, a bunch of the sticks that I'll use. I find that to be the best for me. I've tried lots of other brands, but that can, kind of keep me feeling my best for sure. Otherwise for sleep, I've experimented with like a lot of different things, but nothing's super solid. Like Beam was one that I love. It tastes really good before you go into bed. It has I think it has melatonin in it, but I don't really have an issue getting to sleep. So as long as my schedule kind of aligns and I can prioritize like that getting into bed at that certain time, once my head hits the pillow and I decide it's time to go to bed, I'm out.
That's a good point on the kind of macros versus the micros and identifying, hey, my macros are sleep and hydration, nutrition, right? Like I need to get those before I start worrying about the molecules to come in. And for you, I mean, if you're nailing those macros, you almost don't need, they're nice to have maybe on the micros, but not essential.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I work as a performance mindset coach. And so it's a lot of value work I do with people, seeing like what's the most important thing for you, and then what are the actions that are going to elicit those feelings or those experiences, and trying to niche it down so it's not like this is my morning routine of like 5,000 things. It's like these are the actions that we can take, and you're going to get the most bang from your buck for doing X. Like one example I will give a lot is working out. Like if your gym is 15 minutes away and you're not training with anyone, you're just by yourself with headphones, kind of going through some machines, and you work out for an hour, that's 90 minutes of your day that you're doing alone, inside, maybe not following a program, not maybe getting the most bang for your buck in terms of time. If like community is a value of yours, or nature, or adventure. And so there's, different ways to kind of tweak, like maybe what gym you go to, or where it is, or how you think about your goals or your training program, that can really change how you overall feel about your life.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to talk more about that. I think there's plenty that people would think from the first part of this conversation that it's all fitness, all these things. But actually, professionally, you're a mindset coach, you're a performance coach. And can you say how you got into that? Right. To me, mindset is the foundation of everything else, because we get the right mindset, we prioritize sleep, we can motivate to get to the gym, we can do this other stuff. How did you come to this being your profession?
Yeah, I started off, I've always been a coach to a certain degree, and I started doing strength and conditioning, and I was pretty lucky. The New York Jets came to my college in upstate New York for their training camp in the summertime. And I interned for them the first year, was working with them again the second year, and was able to work with some of the top level, like Hall of Fame style athletes, and just see that work ethic. Then I went out to LA and interned at this place, Athletes Performance, which is now called Exos, doing a lot of NFL combine prep. So training guys for the combine, the 40-yard dash, the vertical jump, shuttle, all that stuff. And what I found I really loved, getting them a few tenths of a second faster in a 40 so they could make a few more $1 million on their contract, it's a fun puzzle for sure. And it's cool working with top athletes. But I actually wound up coming back to New York and was working with a lot of high school and college athletes and just like the general population. And I love the time in between the sets and reps. Like as I'm walking from the field house doing the speed work into the gym to do the strength, talking with athletes on, maybe a relationship or family or, different aspects of their life that really move the needle for how they feel when their bed hits the pillow, versus keeping it all external. Like if I get drafted here, then I am worthy of feeling good about myself. Or if I make X amount of dollars here, then I'm, a good person or a good father or a good friend or whatever. And so I'm always distilling these things back. And that got me into holistic health and wellness, got me into teaching yoga. And then I just really study all of these various modalities. And then when I work with someone now, just like, personal trainer might do, I kind of can drag and drop, these different exercises or frameworks or tools based on where that current person is in their mindset, where they want to go, and what they think is stopping them from getting there.
What is your own kind of personal stress management or mindset day-to-day practice? You were a yoga instructor. Do you meditate? Do you journal? Do you have anything like that other than advising others? Like what does it look like for you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I only really teach the things that I've done in the past, like in my past. I don't do all of the exercises now. Like the easiest way I can describe it to, y'all are athletes. And so you'll understand this. Like if you want to get stronger, there's thousands of exercises that will work to get you stronger, but there are specific ones based on your goals, your time, your injuries, what you actually like to do, the equipment you have. And it's similar with your mindset. There's all of these different exercises that everyone is talking about. And so figuring out what is the best exercise for your goal or a struggle. Like for me, I don't journal at this moment because I'm not struggling with something that I feel like journaling would support. But breath work is something that I will do now. And if I'm stressed out, I can immediately feel like physiologically, oh, I'm stressed. My heart rate's coming up. I'm in this moment. And then I can go to a breathwork practice in real time as I'm maybe communicating with someone that I'm having a stressful engagement with, and that calms myself down. Versus in the past, it could get riled up, and then it's not going to be the best conversation. So it's really dependent on like what it is I need versus what I would just say like checking all of the boxes so that I can be like, cool, got my mindset stuff done today. What's next?
That makes a lot of sense. So you have this toolkit that you can call on through experience, hey, now I need a wrench. Now I need a screwdriver, whatever that tool is. For the breath work, where did you learn those different techniques? Is there something you use, or where did you come across what you use now?
Yeah, I mean, I started with pranayama. So like when I did my yoga teacher training, there's 8 different limbs of yoga. Breathing, pranayama is one of them. So I learned a lot of breathwork tactics there. And then one I like a lot is XPT. It's like Laird Hamilton, who's a big wave surfer, and Gabby Reese. They do this cool like underwater pool training and different ways of regulating your nervous system through that. And so free diving, I've worked with some free divers in different parts of the country just to see, what are they doing and how can I bring that into my life? So like, it's not rocket science. It's simple stuff. Like a cadence breath is one of my favorite, where it's kind of like a box breath, but I'll usually inhale for 4 seconds, hold my breath for 4 seconds, and then exhale for 6 or 8 seconds, and then hold for 4. And that extended exhalation helps me calm down my nervous system and be able to regulate a little bit easier.
Do you utilize any of that kind of breath work on those long runs, or when you're doing these endurance things? Do you have any breathing techniques during those times?
Depending on what the stimulus is, I do. So if it's like an easy run, I'll try to stay nasal as much as possible. And then if I'm wanting to calm myself down, I kind of view it like gears in a car. I can like inhale through my nose, exhale through my mouth, and that will help drop my heart rate a little bit faster than just like in and out through the mouth. If I get to in and out through the mouth, I'm like red line.
Gassed. Yeah. On the nutrition side, I would imagine when you're lifting heavy and the strain you're putting on muscle building versus maybe when you're super high caloric output from longer runs, the fuel you need may look different. What does your nutrition now that you're kind of in this ultra endurance phase look like? What are your protocols and plans there?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's I'm not a dietitian, so these are just like my own personal things. I never want to tell anyone like what they should eat or do, but I experimented recently with like keto and like super low carb and high fat and protein. And that felt really good for me for a while. And then I lost some weight doing that, which was helpful overall. But now I like to keep incorporating carbs. And so if I'm doing like a 100-mile mountain run. I'm still kind of figuring out exactly how I'll play it, but I think it's going to be around like 80 to 100 grams of carbs per hour. And so finding what are those resources I really like and that help keep me going.
What would those carbs come from? Is that like a goo packet? Is it like a liquid carbohydrate? Like knowing that that's kind of really hard to eat like food while you're doing something like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's, you train your stomach as well. So it's helpful to do that during training runs to get used to it. That's actually another thing I'll use the sauna for. Like I'll eat a dinner and then go into the sauna. So I'm like, my body has to digest while it's stressed out. And I view that as training. It's not the best way for my body to digest, but I'm working on, allowing it to do that when, I'm at 12,000 feet hiking up a hill in the middle of the day. And so Spring Energy is my favorite gel. It's made of real food and it's like called Awesome Sauce. It's like kind of like applesauce. So that's easy for me to get in. I can do about like 12 hours of Awesome Sauce and be pretty good. And then after that, I do like to eat real food. So like sandwiches, peanut butter and jellies, turkey sandwiches. About that time, it's kind of like whatever you can get in is going to be great. So these races, they'll have big aid stations with lots of different options for you. And I kind of let my eyes guide me as much as possible then, just to make sure I'm getting things in. But one mistake that I had made was eating like a big pizza before a race, and it had like a little spice on it, and that was not the best way to go. So, understanding and experimenting with what you can eat and still perform the way that you want to perform.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's experimentation going on, but even separate from race days and when you're engaged in it, what does your day-to-day look like in terms of, are you pretty thoughtful of, hey, here's how much I'm running today, here's how many calories I need to get in, and I may need to top up more than I feel like I need to eat because I burned this extra 1,000 calories that I above baseline maybe?
Yeah, no, I'm trying to, my struggle at the moment is trying to lose weight and like maintain performance. And so I'm always flirting with that line. I do well working out in the morning, kind of fasted. I love some ketones in the morning. So I'll do a ketone IQ is really helpful for me. I notice the benefits of that. So I have a lot of water, some coffee. I like to mix it with the element, the ketones. So like element, water, and ketones, I'll have that. And then I can go out for a run or for a ride. I'll have actually ketones as I'm working out. So every hour or so, I like to have one of those if I can. It can be more difficult to just carry that because I'm already carrying a lot of weight. I don't want to carry more, but I do want to be hydrated. And so running in the mountains is nice because there's water along the way. And so I have a little filtration that I'll bring with me. And so I'll have a regular bottle in a naked waistband that I've just got, which I love it. It's awesome. Like I used to have the backpack, the running pack, but I found it got really hot and I just would hold 2 bottles here. It's, easy to drink this way, but having the filtration one on one side, which is like a really easy bendable pack, and then having my other bottle on the other side. And I can just fill it up at a stream, quickly put it into the regular bottle and keep going.
And then when you're at home, separate from the runs, it sounds like you work out fasted. Is it 2 big meals a day, or do you still manage to get 3 in after the workout?
I usually do 2 big ones. Like, what's a normal meal? I like these Belinsky sausages. So I'll have like chicken sausage, super clean. So I'll have a pack of those sausages and then like 4 to 6 eggs. Sometimes avocado, salsa. That'll kind of keep me good until like an earlier dinner time. And then I just love whole foods. So like steaks, chicken, vegetables, trying to like lower the carbs so I can train my body to be a little bit more fat adapted.
I mean, you mentioned a lot of proteins in there. I don't know if you need to supplement at all, but do you have any protein powders that you throw on top of the diet?
Yeah. I love Organifi's protein powder. That's my favorite one for sure. So the chocolate tastes like incredibly good. I am gluten and dairy free for the past like 10 years almost. And so those products are also organic, which is nice. I can't do whey protein, but there's pea protein. And so I'll come home, sometimes make a shake of that if I'm like, having to jump on some client calls or do something else and don't have time to make that meal at that moment.
Do you finish eating at a certain time each night? Like, do you have like that window where you stop, like knowing sometimes I'll like stop eating at 8 if I want to be asleep by 9, but also knowing you need to like kind of experiment with all these different ways of eating. Like, do you do like intermittent fasting or kind of cut yourself off?
I've done some fast in the past. Yeah, some like intense 4-day water fasts, but I don't have like a hard line of like, it's 8 o'clock, I'm not eating anything after this. There's so many things in my life that are regimented, and I like to do a lot of different aspects. Like, I'm not going to eat dinner at 10 o'clock, and I'm going to try to eat early as possible. But so like, as an 8 o'clock dinner would be really late for me. And then I'm going to bed at 9:30, 10 o'clock. So, we like to eat as early as possible because we're hungry at that time.
It is one of the benefits of having young kids for those that are more morning people anyway, because it does kind of force that shift earlier. So you eat earlier, you get to bed earlier, you get that solid sleep, as long as you're not jumping on Netflix or something after they go to bed and doing that.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to the values exercises of like, what are the most important things to you? And we don't own a TV. I think you can probably see the pull down screen. We have a projector. And so if we want to like watch a movie or have that type of experience, it's like, it's an event where we're like setting up the couch, we're getting the popcorn, we're like setting all the pillows, and we're like watching a film versus, oh, what do we do tonight? Let's just like sit on the couch and, find something to watch.
So we didn't have a TV for the longest time, but we still had, back when it was DVDs, a Netflix subscription. And I liked it because the idea of back then was you could sit on the couch and then you watch something you didn't care about or want, and you just get sucked in. And back then the idea was, hey, we have to proactively research and choose what we want to watch. And then this time is going to go in, right? The same idea as event. But now they've gotten the technology so good, right, that it just feeds you exactly what you need and then plays the next one. And so that strategy doesn't work the same as it did 10 or 15 years ago. You talked about with your clients, right? You gave an example of someone who maybe going to the gym, driving the 15 minutes in a dark place, or at least not out in nature, who may have headphones in, so not socializing, and missing that whole part of their life. And in a world where maybe we're on screens a lot, maybe not going in the office, getting some of that socialization, how do you think, especially as you're training really high level for a lot of time, getting that social connection piece in to be able to engage with other human beings and build that part of your life?
Yeah, I think you got to know what the baseline is. Like, we're all different, and we all, some are introverted, some are extroverted. What's like the ideal amount of time for you to have engagements with other people? I like to think of it on like a weekly basis. And so for me, if I can get like 2 solid hangs with my friends, I feel good. And that could be, a run, a mountain bike, something in that kind of capacity. And then I build my life around those types of people. So those are the people I'm naturally attracted to. So like, I don't have anyone now messaging me like, let's go out for a drink or let's go to the bar, because I just don't do those things. They're messaging me, let's go on a hike, let's go on a run, let's go on a rock scramble or whatever. And so I try to actively create community that are doing the things I like to do. So I can kind of get like a lot of bang for my buck with those hangouts. Like, we'll be in the sauna together, we'll do a cold plunge, we'll do some of the training. And yeah, sometimes it's like, if it's a big like training session that I like need to hit these certain goals, I'll probably do that by myself. But if it's like a, chill 90-minute zone 2 ride or run, I can invite some people to come along with me for some of it or all of it or whatever they're wanting to do.
Yeah, I imagine in Boulder as well, that there are pretty good communities around these outdoor activities that keep you moving.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot for sure. Yeah, I've just started an offense. That's my coaching company, the Offense Social Club. So like later today, we're doing a rock scramble in this canyon that's right here. I mean, I can see the mountains, and I'm really fortunate to be able to live here, and I chose to live here because this is a place that I love to be, and love to be around those other people doing those same things. Like I used to live in New York where I grew up. Used to live in Southern California, great places, but I find that, Colorado is a place that I really, really, really love.
Can you say what a rock scramble is? I actually don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, you got to come out. We got to do it. It's basically a mix of like a hike and climbing. So you're not tied in, but you're using your hands to kind of maneuver over different rocks. So it's like, maybe think of a playground and you see like that boulder that all like the kids are playing on. There's just thousands of those boulders kind of all put together. And so you would never like fall off of that boulder and crash. And so it's similar here where you're, climbing with the hands and with the feet and constantly engaged in that same challenge, skills, balance, puzzle kind of situation. Where's the best place to put my foot, my hand? But it's not so extreme where, if you you'll fall.
This kind of comes full circle to one of the things you started with on flow, and this idea of you need it challenging enough so you're not mentally checked out, but not so challenging that every ounce of energy has to go to it. And you said this is part of your coaching business as well. So I imagine there's kind of a mindset purpose behind it. What is the thought in, hey, we're going to do something that's physical and social and is stimulating the mind at this level to keep you engaged, but not so engaged you're not social? Is there kind of a science behind it and how you put this together?
Yeah. I mean, it's really dependent upon like each person, but there are certain situations. Like a rock scramble is a great example because there's so many different ways to go up the scramble. You can go on one side of the ridge. It's a little bit scarier. You can go on the actual, on the ridge, more medium. And then if you're scared or, trusting yourself that day or whatever, you can go to the right side and kind of like hike up the ridge. And so again, I like that skills and challenge balance. And flow state comes from positive psychology, which is essentially the art of human flourishing. So when I think about positive psychology, I like to think of people who feel like they're at like 60 to 80% of their perceived maximum potential, whatever that is. And they want to try to close the gap towards 100%. And so there's all of these like optimizations, systemizations, delegations, all these things that we can do to kind of move towards that direction. And that's the place that my coaching helps people move towards. And flow state is a huge aspect of that gets a lot of talk through sports, music. Anytime you're dialed in and focused on one thing where time slows down, you're in the zone, that's a state of flow. And ideally, we want to be in that state as much as possible because it's the state that we can perform our best as human beings, whether that's a conversation, cooking, even cleaning, whatever it is. If you're creative enough to create a challenge and then focused enough to practice a skill, you can get into that state. So a mantra I like to use is practice everything, because there's difference between like doing the dishes and practicing doing the dishes, or brushing your teeth or practicing brushing your teeth. It brings more of that intention and focus to it, which leads you to feel better about that experience.
You talk about human flourishing, and that seems like a big driving purpose for you, right? Like it started with flourishing in the physical sense of getting these people to perform at this top level from 99.8 to 99.9, right? And then expanding that out. And I just think as you look at it across the idea of flourishing and the components that are necessary in it, are there any in your own life that we've not touched on that you kind of, by listening to yourself, and it was those conversations in between the reps and sets, you say, hey, actually, this is maybe my unique zone of genius. Let me lean more into that. Are there other elements like that of your life where you found for me to flourish day to day or week to week or month to month, these are some of those macros that I need to incorporate into my life proactively.
Yeah, definitely. I'll give you three. Okay. One is your mindset. And if you think of Carol Dweck, she wrote this book called Mindset and talks about fixed or growth mindsets. You can't flourish if you have a fixed mindset, which would be things are the way they are. I'm handcuffed to my life based on the way I grew up, who my parents are, where my friends are. It is the way it is. I'm going to be an alcoholic or I'm going to be whatever, and I'm stuck. I'm fixed. That needs to change to a growth mindset. Whereas I can improve if I put in the work, if I challenge myself, I have the ability to grow. To get from fixed to growth, there's many ways to do it. One I like is a mindset journal. So again, every time you feel yourself internally coming up with that fixed mindset, writing it down what the fixed mindset is and manually changing it to a growth mindset. So like an example would be I'm an alcoholic, or I'm going to be an alcoholic because my family is, and that's just the way that it is. That'd be fixed versus I get to choose if I want to drink alcohol or not, and I can learn different ways of coping with my emotional stress. And I will do that. That would be a growth. So that's like key. And there'll be different areas of your life where some will be easier to be in a growth and some will be harder. Like, financially, socially, spiritually, physically, we'll all have different ways. So we'll need to focus on those. And then the middle one is ownership. So taking ownership, again, is similar to saying growth mindset, but that's I'm in control of my life and of the things that are happening. And so if I want to make a change, then I need to point the finger towards me. That can be empowering, can also be stressful because especially if you're used to pointing the finger externally, it's like, oh man, I actually have to deal with my stuff. The best way I like to do this is through language. And so there's one specific word, I talk about this word a lot and I want it to be like on a big billboard, but is the word should. I should work out more. I should make more money. I should have a six pack. I should eat more salads. I should do the things that Mike told me to do on this podcast. Like those are all external aspects that we put on ourselves, expectations. And so we can feel weighted down by those, and it can quiet our ability to hear what our own truth is. And now we're living in an external world versus an internal world, which kind of puts us back into that fixed mindset for a second. So my goal for anyone listening is to never, ever utter the word should again, like exit out of your life. And anytime you feel that word coming up, insert the words want or don't want. And it forces you to make a decision and then move towards that decision. It gives you more autonomy over the actions that you take, which then will help you with how you feel like you're flourishing in your life. That's easier said than done for sure. So there's many ways to dive deeper into that. And then those were two. The last one, I forget at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, even those two are really good. I think there's a line in Shakespeare's Julius Caesar where they're telling him to come to the forum, and he says, "Tell him Caesar will not. Not that I cannot, even less so that I shan't not, but I will not." And just this idea of agency, we are not bit players in our own life. We have that full agency. We get to write the story. We get to tell the story, and understanding that the power of the pen resides in our own hand is just so empowering.
Yeah, totally. And like, I'm a physical person, so I like to use physical feats or challenges to write that story. Like, 3 years ago, if you told me I would be running the Leadville 100 and biking and doing all these races, I would have told you you're crazy. But I start to slowly put in that work. Now, when I cross that finish line, I'll just put a huge deposit of like self-worth and love into myself that then I can use towards, a business or a relationship or friendships or family, like whatever it is that I want to do. I remember the third one, if you want to hear it real quick.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. It's gratitude. There's a cool study done by this VIA Institute of Character that looks at all of these different attributes of what increases an individual's well-being the most, like love, courage, honesty, hope. And by far, gratitude was a thing that like moved the needle the most. And so if you truly feel grateful for your life, that will increase your well-being the most. The key is really letting that land. And so an exercise I like to use is called the 4 W's, kind of links gratitude with ownership, where it's you write down, the pen that you were just mentioning, what went well and why. And the why aspect is so important because it gives you the opportunity to take ownership over your life, which then helps you take more growth mindset over your life and make it link all full circle.
And coming back to where you started on a lot of this, that positive psychology side, it's not what went wrong and why, it's what went well. Let me lean more into the good things and create more opportunities for those in my life.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you go through your life seeing all the things that went well and then why they went well, what went well was this podcast today because I got my movement in before, I prioritized my sleep, I was hydrated, I could focus and be present here. That's going to reinforce okay, cool, I can do this. I can, whatever it is. And then in the future, I'm going to have that kind of deposit that I can then lean on and, withdraw from an account if I may be having, a low confidence day or something.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a beautiful place to close because, Mike, I am so grateful that you took the time to share all of this with us and our listeners. You continue to be an inspiration. I'm even more inspired now. I was with the crazy lifts. And then now hearing that you've totally said, hey, I'm going to go this 90-degree turn and try something totally different, just continue to inspire and motivate. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for having me, both of you, Taylor and Andrew, and for bringing this podcast out. Keep on spreading that health message. It's really important. And I imagine both of you have felt so good. And I felt so good from doing some of these practices that then I want to just share it and creating a platform for people to share that so then they can hear something, think it's possible, put it into action in their life is really awesome.
And we'll certainly link out to everything in the show notes, especially for those that may be listening and want to learn more about your performance coaching. We'll have the links all to that. For anybody who wants to follow up. So thank you so much, Mike.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Home of Healthspan podcast. And remember, you can always find the products, practices, and routines mentioned by today's guests, as well as many other Healthspan role models on alively.com. Enjoy a lively day.